Right, have we got everybody back yet? I'm needing Mike. Edit.
I've got the
Mike's
essentials,
here.
more caffeine.
Yeah, me too, Roger. Can't survive without it.
No, we're just streaming again on YouTube, just for your reference. Oh, here's Mike. Right. Let me find where we were again.
I think we've got, Chair, to page 15 of Appendix 3, Submission 13.1.
That's right. Okay. So, so we're all ready to start. We'll get going. We're on page 15, point number 13.1. It's obviously requests which have been really, I mean, I've just tried to count all the submissions here in support of the Cambridge Community House Trust. You know, there are many. And of course, we had a really good chat with Harriet Dixon this morning. So can I have somebody kicking me off in this space here, please, in terms of their request and their submissions? Jim.
Yeah. Susan, look, from all of the submissions and with this COVID-19 going on, they're the only group really in Cambridge that is set up to deliver social services. So look, I'm fully in support of the whole package, really. I suppose I just wonder whether we can help fund the building works, the 50,000 loan fund it, so that it's not too much of an impact on us in this year. And look, that's down to Ken and the team, I suppose, how we fund it, but and then supporting their operating costs to the full, whatever it was, 60-odd thousand. If there's not enough money in the arbitrage funds, then it's one project that would need to go onto the rates, as far as I could see.
Liz.
Yeah, thanks, Susan. I think this group have put a great effort in getting their concerns and their needs in front of us. Because they're valid, you know, they need the help, and they've been really working hard to get this building up, and have unfortunately come across this problem, which they just was simply unforeseen for them. So, you know, their expertise lies in what they do, not in building a building. So anything that we can do to help. I thought her comment was very valid as well, that this particular building, whatever the future holds, it sits on council land and will be able to use, you know, hopefully for their purposes for a very long time. But if that was not to be the case, then it could always be used for something else. So us investing in this building, for me, is, yeah, I fully support it.
Thank you. Graham, then Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Very, very supportive of this. As a council, we have been talking about how we can help the disadvantaged, the people in the community that are badly affected. And this one, in my view, gives exactly that for our community. So yeah, fully supportive. And what area we would do that, I'm not too sure, but I think the arbitrage would be the one that I would, so not affecting rates from that point of view. Thank you.
Roger. Roger, then Mike.
Whoops, thank you. Yes, I certainly support this. And I think that the thing that gets me about this one is that even though it's a request for a grant towards building, the impacts of that building being finished and the services that it provides are really going to be within that period, pretty much immediately, that we're talking about, in terms of that remainder of this year and next year through to June 21. I'm like Graham, I'd like to see it in a non-rates impact mode, maybe from arbitrage or something like that, but I certainly support whatever we can do to make this happen.
Thanks, Roger.
Thanks.
Who was next? Marcus. Marcus?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is there any chance that we could look at it being part funded or something from the local community boards?
They don't really have a lot of money, do they?
No.
Whether it comes,
There's bugger all in there, sorry.
yeah, well, and whether it comes out of the community board funds or the council funds, it's still ratepayer money. So
Yeah.
whether it goes out of the community board or not, but I think one of the other issues is that we should be mindful that the Kāinga Araha and Te Awamutu may be certainly struggling for funds as well, but they haven't made the request at the moment. But I think you could probably anticipate that potentially outside of the annual plan round. But dealing with the problem that we've got at the moment, yeah, look, I don't think trying to pass it off to the community boards is going to be of much assistance to them.
Thanks,
Jim.
Jim.
Just we did contribute $1,000 last year to the operating costs.
Lou. Lou, you'll have to unmute yourself. Lou, I'm sorry, Lou, we can't hear you. You haven't unmuted yourself.
Mute. There we go.
There you go, Lou.
Yeah,
Phil,
sorry, just couldn't unmute myself there for a moment. I'm very supportive of the whole issue. I think it's great. It actually ties in nicely with our proposed recoveries that we're talking about as council. It's part of what we'll have to deal with more and more with COVID-19 and the after effects. And these people are really at the front line of what we need to be doing. I'm very, very impressed with their presentation and very, very impressed with the work that they're doing. And I think having a community house like they've got, which is, as I say, apolitical, outside all the religions, it just stands alone and supports everyone. I think it has a great future. So I'm very supportive. How we fund it, I think we need to deal with that as an issue, probably separately to supporting it. But I do think it does need to go ahead.
Thanks, Lou. Phil.
Yeah, it's just, there's no question about it here. Fully support it, and we can't wait for central government. They will probably never turn up, or if ever they'll turn up. So it's a big yes for me. So, yep.
Andrew, and then Alwyn.
Hi, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, this is it's a building on council-owned land, which is an advantage, but it's a group that's operating very effectively already. It would be a disaster to see it fold for the lack of the funding that they're asking for, like 50 for the building and 50 operating. Yeah, I would like to see, if possible, that it has as little effect on rates. It's not going to be a big effect, even if it comes out of rates. And it's an effective group that needs support. So I'm definitely supporting it.
All right, thanks, Andrew. Alwyn.
Yes, I would agree with what all has been said. It's an essential service. It's certainly what we're going to need for in the next few years. They're up and running right now. They're investing it into a property that's owned by council. It really does tick all the boxes. So I do.
And
great, thank you, Alwyn. Hazel.
And I totally support it, because it's a blueprint of my thoughts for the whole district. And so I totally support it, and congratulations to them for now they can add other services to it. I think so it's got my support.
Great, thank you, Hazel. I think we can pretty confidently say that has unanimous support around the table. I haven't heard any dissenting voices. It's just a question of how we go about doing it. So turning our minds now to the staff comments and the recommendations made there, I assume from the feedback that we've been given here that we're comfortable with what that says there.
Yeah.
Approving, that the council considers the request within the budget constraints of the annual plan. And so we're good with that. We can clear away there are 9 submissions to this effect. So we can essentially clear away all 9, because they all have the same principle in terms of support for the community house and request for support funding. Roger, you're raising your hand there.
Question: if it's on council land, does it in time become a vested asset for council?
Who can answer that one? Ken. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Yes, yeah, I'm just in the process of doing that. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look at yeah, not necessarily. And now in all of our community leases, we do have what's called a reversionary clause. So yeah, so if the actual entity you know stops ceases operating, in that case yeah, any buildings that they choose not to take away with them yeah, obviously become council buildings, but it's not an automatic vesting by any means. It's only if the entity yeah, basically yeah, folds or chooses to yeah, to give up that land lease, and of course for an entity like the Cambridge Community House, we hope that will never ever be the case, obviously.
All right, so it does there is a lesser risk in the use of council monies in this regard.
Yes, yeah. So through the chair, yes, there is certainly a lesser risk. Yeah, whatever building is on that land is obviously on council land. Yeah, so it's you know, pretty difficult or pretty costly to remove bricks and mortar off land, isn't it? So that gives us a natural security. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Also, there's a message there from Portal supporting this funding depending on the financial constraints, and is happy for the final decision to be made at the finance meeting. Thank you for that, Portal. So on the assumption that we're all happy with that, which we are, although Jim's raising a finger. Jim, we can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. And just a point, and I don't know whether anyone's got the information, but they make the point that there's $18,000 related to the COVID-19 costs. And I'm just wondering, is any of that claimable from civil defence emergency funds?
My reading of it was that a lot of it was technology based. A lot of, obviously everybody had to go remote, and I don't know what that they would get that back. I'm not clear about that. Who would best be able to answer that for us?
Ken, is there anyone from civil defence that would?
Actually, the best person to answer that, but I'm not sure if he's still on the Zoom, would be Wayne Allen. But yeah, I think Wayne was with us earlier this morning. I'm not sure if he still is, or Debbie, do you know?
Yeah. Look, I need to have a look at that, Jim, to understand clearly, you know, what costs they've incurred. It's pretty rigid requirements in terms of what can be claimed for in terms of reimbursement back through to NEMA, the government central agency for funding, but essentially it is wrapped around the welfare components of essential items like food and shelter and their blankets and firewood and those sorts of things. So we certainly can't claim for running the EOC and sustenance and things like that, or technology, and I would think it would be the same situation for any other community groups as well, but certainly happy to understand those costs and get some comments back to them.
Yeah, it's set out on page 92 of Appendix 1, their costs, and it seems to be a bit of a mix of IT, communications, and then continuing provision of food parcels and household goods. So there's no breakdown there. So there may need to be, if you want clarity around them, I guess, to communicate with them over that.
My understanding is that they have been tapping into the central government funding for the food parcels. So I would say that those costs are related to their setup to working from home, so they won't be eligible to claim that.
Yeah, it does say this has meant an increase in IT expense, currently 17,000, and a huge increase in monthly expenses for outgoing phone calls, additional $500 per month, as our primary contact with families and counselling appointments is now by phone. We continue to provide food parcels and household goods. So if what you say is right, Debbie, it must just be the IT component that they've detailed in their submission. Which, if what Wayne says is correct, that they can't claim back, then that is a loss or a cost they have to bear. Yeah. Okay. Ken?
Yeah, so look, just in regard to wider government support, does anyone know if the Cambridge Community House has qualified for the government wage subsidy? Because they do have some paid employees. Does anyone know if they've qualified for that. The big trigger for that, or the qualification criteria, and the main being that you've had a 30% decline in your income. Has anyone got any knowledge of whether they've got that? But because the only thing I was going to say, so one component of the submission is looking for some support for ongoing annual operation costs. And what I was going to say is that probably 10 to 14 days ago, the government announced a small business cash flow loan scheme, where essentially to support ongoing operating costs for businesses affected by COVID, well, businesses, community organisations, etc., affected by COVID. You could actually get basically get a loan from the government. The IRD administers the scheme. Quite clearly, it's a loan that needs to be repaid back. But if repaid in the first year, it's absolutely interest free. So it allows you to buy some time. And I believe the maximum length of the loan was 4 years. If you go beyond the year without repaying, then it carries an interest rate of 3%. So obviously an attractive interest rate. But I do just wonder if the Cambridge Community House has explored that possibility. The key criteria for qualifying for that loan is if you qualified for the wage subsidy, you're pretty much qualify for that loan. So that might be something. Just in fact, it is a bit regrettable that I didn't think about that this morning when they were actually on the screen. So my apologies for that, but that might be something worth just going back to them on as well.
Mm-hmm. Good point, Ken. Okay, so
yeah, just wondering whether our best thing to do is to do a $50,000 package plus 80, which is COVID related, and clean that up, because this morning they seem to still be getting some quite good donations from some of the bigger organisations, but this would certainly help them on the way, I would assume.
Mm. Yeah, so
where you go, Ken?
Oh yeah, so I was going to say, I mean, it's clear that there's very good support around the table for this organisation, and that makes total sense. I suppose our biggest concern is the restraints that we've got with our own funding. If we don't want to put this back onto the rates accounts, it seems to me that the only real option that we've got is arbitrage funds, and of course this council has talked previously and will be looking on the 9th of June at potentially using those arbitrage funds as a major means of sourcing funding recovery efforts. So I'm just mindful, like in relation to this discussion, in relation to the discussion on the church just before, if we're seeing those arbitrage funds as a resource, and it's quite natural that we would, because they don't have the rating implications. I think the only thing to really consider there is that going to compromise our recovery efforts, because quite clearly we're dealing with a limited bucket of funds.
Through you, Susan, just on the point that I made, Ken, is there any reason that we can't loan fund the 50,000 for the house? It's going into a capital project, and therefore it'd have very minor effect on our rates. So that would deal with that, and then the operating grant potentially out of arbitrage.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Your Worship, so when you're talking about funding the 50,000 by loan, are you suggesting that we basically, council borrows the money and then it's still a grant to the entity? Is that what you're suggesting by funding by loan? So we're not lending money. Yes, we're not lending money to the entity, but we're borrowing it and granting it. Yes. Yeah. So look, that is a possibility, Your Worship. And in fact, I guess a mechanism to avoid that hitting rates is that we do that. We borrow the 50,000. We make that grant to the entity, and then in terms of any servicing costs for that $50,000 loan, we actually fund that potentially by arbitrage funds, and then there would be no impact on the ratepayer, and obviously that's far less of a direct hit on the arbitrage funds, which as I said before, could potentially compromise our recovery efforts.
Liz, you had your hand up there, or did Jim Jim, you're muted.
I'm back off now. Ken, I'm just wondering, why would we want to be funding the repayment costs or the loan costs from arbitrage? It just seems to me that it's going to be so insignificant in terms of our overall rating picture, and it won't kick in until the following year anyway, my understanding with that loan proposition.
So look, there will potentially be some cost implications for council. I mean, if it is only a $50,000 loan, I suppose that those costs are minimal. Your worship, the only reason I was suggesting servicing that loan cost out of arbitrage was to effectively keep it off the rates, to avoid us having to increase rates. But yes, I do take your point. The amount involved would probably be relatively minimal and perhaps could be absorbed elsewhere. I just have to take some direction from the finance team in terms of what the actual costs are that we'd be talking about.
Because by the time we get to the end of this year, we'll have spent all of our arbitrage money, and so the continuing repayment of the loan is going to come out of rates anyway.
Yes, you're correct. Correct on that, Your Worship. I guess what I was thinking is we look at the longer term picture as part of the LTP. So obviously, once we've got through this annual plan year, it's a whole new scene in terms of our LTP.
Liz.
Hey, so if we're looking at doing some operational costs for the Cambridge Community House, I wonder whether, and this is going a little bit off tangent, but I think we need to consider the needs for the whole district. So whether the equivalent organisation, which I understand in Te Awamutu is probably the Kāinga Aroha, whether same consideration needs to be made for Te Awamutu and Kiki, for example. I'm just mindful of how this might look. We only fund half of a district or part of a district.
Marcus?
I support Liz's comments on that.
Yeah, Andrew's nodding his head. Mike's giving us thumbs up.
Sorry, just through the chair. Look, that arbitrage fund, we talked about it being for COVID recovery, but to me, this is part of COVID recovery. This is about mental well-being and hauora in our community. So that's at the forefront of recovery. It's not all about finances, it's about people's well-being. So personally, I've got no issue if there's, this should be towards the top of the pile. I've got no issue with sharing it across the district. I think that makes sense, but I think the appropriate fund is the arbitrage fund for this.
Jim. You have to unmute yourself, Jim.
Okay, now?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with Mike in terms of the request at the moment is because of, or potentially because of COVID. The number of meetings I've had at the Cambridge Community House were prior to COVID. We've had this problem in the community for a number of years, and we will have it continuing on. It's not just a one-off commitment, I would suggest, that we should be looking at here. This is likely to be ongoing for a number of years and possibly forever. So this is a long-term proposal that we're talking about, I would suggest, not just a one-off.
Yeah, any other comments from anybody there? Claire?
Yeah, I fully support supporting, giving funding to this group. My question's a little bit wider though, because one of the things about the arbitrage fund is we're also considering those community development roles. Well, it occurs to me that actually these groups in Cambridge and Te Awamutu, they're already connected with a lot of those stakeholders where we would be wanting to get intel from and early notice that something was needed. And I wonder whether or not we could look to those groups to fulfill some of that community development role. So when we're thinking about how we would use arbitrage funds, we may not need to allocate that full amount that was considered for those roles to new roles, but actually it would be covered by the operational grants to these social services groups.
Hazel.
And that's exactly what I mean. Thank you, Claire. That's exactly it. I wasn't meaning not to consider the 2 new appointments, but I was saying that if we coordinate all the groups together in some way, that the funding will follow, because the community will follow, you know, so will all the other organisations that give money when you see something like this, which is supported by the whole of the community. And that could actually mean not just Cambridge and Te Awamutu, but many cases are outside of these 2 towns. And so I think it's a very powerful, it will become a very powerful group to be able to look to the well-being post in our council. So that's what was running through my mind, but I thought I'd better not harp on too much.
Thanks, Hazel. Phil, you had your finger raised there. No, we can't hear you.
No, well, I didn't really have my fingers raised, but even if it is added to the rates, I mean, I think the community would support it wholly, and even on people that are on lesser incomes or struggling financially, they'd be prepared to pay for it and within their rates. So if it did come out of rates, then I think the community would be right behind it. They're already a really established group and doing a great job out there, so and will continue to do for many years yet too.
Great. Okay, thanks for your comments, Phil. So I guess in terms of the suggestions around kāinga araha and provision across the district, obviously because they haven't submitted, we can't make provision for them under the annual plan process, but it's certainly something we can consider in the wider context around the Waipawa District Council recovery effort, which of course we'll look at greater detail in a few weeks' time. So I think at this point, I imagine from what I'm hearing from you all, we're comfortable with the recommendations and staff comments on a variety, a really large number of submissions, about 9, I think, in total, in connection with the Cambridge Community House.
Yeah.
We're all comfortable with assisting them in both spheres, and it's just a question of how we go about doing that. So, Graham, would I be right in being able to square away a whole bunch of those all in one foul swoop? Because I can list them for you.
Yes, I've made a list of them as well.
Oh, I bet you have.
I make it, and we might be able to square off the lists here to see whether we're in agreement. 13.1.
Yep.
14.1.
Yes.
15.1.
Yes.
Which is violence-free Waipawa in support of Cambridge Community House Trust. 16.1.
Yes.
And 17.1.
Yes.
Then we jump one to 24.1.
Yes.
Jump another one to 28.1.
Yep.
It was Julie Epps' submission from this morning. 36.1.
Correct.
And 37.1 is almost covered by it, but not directly.
No.
And 40.1.
That's right. Those are the ones I
come back to 37.1 separately because it is more general.
It's a bit different. It doesn't specifically name the community house. Yeah.
Yeah.
So look, I'm comfortable with squaring those all away, all in one foul swoop. They all have the same response and the same recommendation, and they all refer to reasonably strong, or very strong support from the community for the Cambridge Community House. So I think we can move on from that matter onto the next one, which I think, according to my calculations, is 23.3.
Yeah.
Does that stand? So that is on page 18 for those who are following on the appendix there. And this is the Cambridge Neighbourhood Support. Yeah. Yeah. So Jenny Dacomb came and spoke to us yesterday from the Cambridge Neighbourhood Support Group. They've sought continued support and funding, and we have the recommendation there. I only had a couple of questions because I thought their actual request was more specific in terms of things they sought. They were wanting 3 things. Look, I'll have to find it, but I'll open up the floor for questions and comments while I find what I'm looking for. Does anybody have anything to add or comment on this one?
Susan, Bruce, I think they can still get support from New Zealand neighbourhood support too, even for those signs getting made. So there are funding avenues through the New Zealand national body, as far as I know.
Okay.
That's only one little part of it.
Yeah.
So through you, Madam Chair, my understanding with this one is that we weren't planning on reducing the funding. So it's just really they want confirmation that we're going to continue with that same level of funding and the staff. Yeah, so we're not increasing it, so there shouldn't be too many problems.
I guess I just want a clarification that was the case, because I see their submission doesn't actually provide any particular specific numbers, and I wasn't aware equally how much we actually support them. So I guess their request, there were 3 bullet points there. They wanted to be acknowledged as an important link between the community, police and civil defence and other agencies, which I think we did a pretty good job at when we spoke with Jenny yesterday. And then they want to continue financial backing to contributing to the salary, who currently works for the person who works 25 hours, and financial support to purchase new signage, and continued support from Waipa Mapping Department, as well as potentially supporting an educator, an engagement officer rather, on their Ruru or owl mascot project. So I guess I understand we all I presume we'd all want to support this entity, but I guess there was just numbers missing, and I wanted to make sure we weren't saying, yeah, we'll continue to support you, without there being a meeting of the minds around how much that came to.
So, Susan, would you just quickly tell me where you are, please?
Okay. I was just reading then from Appendix 1, which are the longer submissions, the long submissions, full submission, page 123. So it's got all the documents in it from all of the submitters, and that fleshes out specifically what they sought.
Thank you.
Susan, from what I wrote down, Jenny said that any further funding would be appreciated, but it wasn't the kind of a place to ask her how much. So we left it.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess Phil.
Yeah, I'm not actually allowed to speak, but if I could.
We'll stop then.
I can't say anything. Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Can anybody enlighten us any further in terms of what they're seeking, or is Phil able to do that? I'm not sure.
I was just going to say a little statement to.
No, you really can't, Phil. Sorry.
Okay.
But does anybody else have anything to add on that? Roger.
Hang on.
Yeah.
There we go. Just clarification. Can anybody give us an indication of what they currently get? What's in our current year's funding that they've received?
Ken, are you able to help us on that one?
I'm just wondering if Deborah is able to respond. Deborah is in the meeting. So Deborah, is that something that you're able to specify for us, please?
Is somebody able to give me the actual name, because I do not have anything under Cambridge Neighbourhood Support. Is this Cambridge ComSafe?
Yes,
yes, it is.
Yes.
Cambridge Neighbourhood Support is the organisation that's filed the submission.
But is it known as Cambridge ComSafe?
No, I don't think they are. No, from my understanding, there's Cambridge Safer Communities Trust. So I'm getting a bit confused about which organisations which.
It's part of the Cambridge Community Patrol.
We currently, through the chair, we currently give a grant to Cambridge Safer Community of 20,000 a year. But I've got that under Cambridge Safer Community or ComSafe.
Graham, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I have Jenny Dacon's phone number. I will give her a call, shall I? And just check.
Yeah, I think that would help potentially clear up the lack of clarity on that
go
point.
offline and just check check how much they're currently receiving and under what name.
Okay, I'm just got some.
Deborah,
Okay.
could I, oh, sorry, Susan, through you to
No,
Deborah. Or me? Can we clarify that with ComSafe is Te Amutu based? The Cambridge one is under, I thought it was under Cambridge Community Safer Communities Trust, the 20,000, but there's it's not ComSafe Cambridge. It's two different organisations.
Through the chair, I am running based on the natural account number that we charged it to, not the actual company or organisation who receives it. And I've got a line for Te Amutu Safer Community, which is the Te Amutu ComSafe. And then when they set it up as Cambridge Safer Community. So they are two different organisations, we know that, but I'm just giving you the description of what we have the money based against. So
thank you, Deborah, that's good.
Okay, well, do we want to leave, let Graham, obviously he's snuck off to give Jenny a call just to clarify that. And in the meantime, shall we move on to the next one, or would we prefer to wait? We can move on,
Susan.
Yeah, the next one is the Cambridge Historical Society. Let me just get my right papers in front of me. So their submissions appear on page 18 of the submission volume by subject, and it's point number 51.1. Now, obviously, there was Roger's, get your masking tape out, Roger. Yeah. Roger is unable, has a conflict here, and as does Mike. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I've got really nothing to do with them, but I think our trust answers to them.
Oh, okay. All right. So there we have a submission from them pointing out that they currently receive an annual sum of 160,000 plus GST towards operating costs. And they wish to make an application for this grant plus the cost of living increase. And so plus a reduced grant. I couldn't quite understand this myself, a reduced grant for the collection project. I know we were advancing was 80,000 for that for the last 2 years, but I guess they're saying we want to reduce that amount you've been giving to us one-offs. That's how I kind of read that. Well, Liz, or do you understand?
Yeah, so they made an application to us through the annual plan for a one-off 40,000 2 years ago. They weren't able to complete the work, and this was and Marcus will remember this well because I remember having a lot to say on this.
Yeah.
And this was to work through the collection and to catalogue it and to really look hard at each item and decide what was staying and what was not going to stay.
Yeah.
They came back to us last year and said they hadn't been able to finish the project. Could we extend it for another year? So that's where the second 40,000 came in. That's my recollection. So now what they're asking for is again making application for a further 25.
Okay, so the one-off request for funding of 40,000 2 years ago became 80, and now it's about to become 105. Is that okay? Cool. That was the decreased amount that kind of threw me. Okay, all right. So that's the position we're in respect of that. The recommendation we have there is to approve funding for the operational costs, which have been included in the draft annual plan, and obviously the staff commentary there on that. Has anybody got something to say about that or a question? Marcus, I know you're itching to comment.
Yeah, I'm just give me
just give you a second. Claire, were you just scratching your ear or did you want to talk?
Well, a bit of both, yeah. Look, I was just keen to get some more information from the society to see how they're getting on with that collection project, because there wasn't very much information given, so it does seem to be taking a very long time and taking a lot of money, and we don't really know how they're going with it and whether or not the outcomes that we were hoping to achieve through it, are going to be actually realised. There wasn't much information either on how the visitor numbers are going, and that even, I mean, they could exclude the COVID-19 period and things like that. So I just felt that I'd like a little more background information.
Okay, thank you, Claire. Jim, you had a comment to make.
Just through you, Madam Chair, I was just thinking that in terms of the constraints that we're under at the moment, continuing with their grant plus the cost of living allowance or inflation, whatever you want to call it, on top of it, is about as far as I'd be comfortable going. We haven't got the extra money to be dishing out this year, and if the program has to wait, there's a lot of other programs we're looking at that have just got to wait as well. So look, happy with the annual plan amount, and as I say, the cost of living allowance or inflation allowance that's already built in, and that's it.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jim. I'd have to say I feel, that sort of proposal resonates with me too. So anybody else have anything to add to that? Marcus? I
would, just going back on what Claire said, need some more breakdowns on what they've done and things, because the amount of money they've received does seem quite a lot to assess a collection. Well, I don't know how much it does cost to assess a collection or whatever, but some progress updates on where they are would really help. I'm just not feeling really comfortable with supporting it as it is.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add that isn't Roger or Mike? Phil, are you waving your arm around? Just.
There we go. Sorry. Just with the numbers, I mean, obviously before COVID, the numbers were very strong, visitor numbers. And talking to the manager on the weekend, the numbers were, they were encouraged by the numbers that have been coming through since level 2, wasn't it? Since level 2 started. So although they're not up to before COVID, they're very happy with the numbers that were coming through the last few weeks. So just to give you a bit of feedback on that.
Okay, thanks for that, Phil. Okay, with that said, we have the submission there, we have the staff comments and the recommendation to just approve the operational costs which have been included in the annual plan. However, it's I think we've kind of had enough of a discussion on this point. We're quite comfortable with that for now. I take it. Good. Okay, excellent. Well, we can move on then to the next one, which, according to my calculations, is there are a few generic ones in the centre here, aren't there? 37.1. That be right, Graham? Yep.
Yeah.
This was obviously a submission in very general terms about supporting wellbeing in the district with no specific reference to any given entity. So the reply I thought was pretty apt in terms of our support for the urgent development of implementation of the recovery plan. So I think we're all comfortable with that. Excellent. Square that one off. And then that should take us through
42.1
to 42.1, which is the final one in the section on to do with sports grounds and facilities. So looking for relief for sporting organisations in terms of ground hireage and the likes and rents. There's quite a substantive response there and a recommendation. Roger, you have your hand up.
Yeah, my understanding was there was some government funding through Sport Waikato for sporting organisations to which this would apply. So I think it's being addressed from another agency.
Well, it makes reference there in the staff comment. Yeah. Graham?
Oh, yeah. Sport Waikato administering that from the government, but I think the announcement from government wasn't out before this was submitted.
Okay, that makes sense. Mike?
Just happy to support that staff recommendation. I think it's pretty clear.
Okay, cool, excellent. I think we're all good to go on that. No dissenting views. So that means we should move on now to the next section, service delivery. So we're on page 22, point number 10.3. There's a request there for focusing on infrastructure. And of course, a well-worded response about balancing the need to reduce economic impact while at the same time maintaining essential infrastructure, with an acknowledgement of that submission and an endorsement. So I think we're probably comfortable with that. Yeah, excellent. The next one's somewhat similar in terms of a request from somebody in terms of encouraging us to exercise fiscal responsibility. And there's mention there made of the collaboration with our neighbours in terms of the shovel-ready projects, and that we're considering our position in terms of a revised annual plan in due course. So I take it we're comfortable with that one?
Yep.
Yep. Right, the next one, again, similar request and cited response by staff is the shovel-ready package, and that the recommendation is that we think that's submitted with their suggestion. There's no further action required. Comfortable with that? Excellent. And now we move on to Te Awamutu Community Board submissions in this area. So the first one is obviously just I recall actually the meeting that we had to work up these submissions, and it was really a case of not wanting to take our foot off the pedal too much in terms of ensuring that projects that were going to lead to promote better wellbeing and aid recovery shouldn't be abandoned, I think was the approach that the community board took. So that was the thrust behind that submission, and obviously the response is there and a recommendation there by council, which I take it we're all comfortable with.
I must admit, Madam Chair, I was a little bit surprised from the community board in Te Awamutu on this one, because when you've got a large project like the Cambridge Pool, you certainly wouldn't want to stop, because the setting up cost to get it going again is absolutely immense.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're aware of that. I mean, those community facilities that will enable and improve community, social wellbeing as we go forward. So they're important to be maintained and continue construction of if you happen to be in that space. So anyway, moving along, thank you for that comment, Graham. Moving along to the next one, 19.3, George Street Car Park. This has been an ongoing bugbear, if you like, of people in Te Awamutu, and in particular Te Awamutu Community Board for some time. The bottom line, I think, is that it's desirable but not essential in terms of the suggested changes for that. And the submission is responded to by council, just accepting that and noting them. Claire, have you a comment to make?
Well, I recall that Ange, in her presentation, she said there were serious safety issues involved with that footpath, like the raised footpath leading to the toilet. And I just wonder whether or not council's getting those statistics sent to them so they're aware of just how serious the situation is. I mean, it never gets reported to us in any of our committee meetings. And while I accept that it's desirable but not essential, sort of overall, but I mean, if there's a particular part of the proposal that might make a good sense to actually make sure we get it done for safety reasons, I would be in support of that.
Thanks, Claire. Andrew.
Hi. Yeah, from my time on the community board, this was in action the whole 6 years pretty much. I do wonder, I agree with the staff comment that it's desirable but not essential to do the full capital works, but I do wonder whether it's worth suggesting to our transport people, Brian perhaps, of doing something similar to what they did on the corner of Mahoe Street and Market with the traffic calming thing, just to encourage drivers to take care, and whatever, very low cost, but may well have a good result.
Yeah, look, it's worth a shot. Oh, here he is, the man in question.
Thank you, through your chair, lady, that we have been making progress on this project, and we just recently replaced a whole lot of asphalt that was failing in front of the warehouse, and that was the first step to obviously get that done before we work on those pedestrian crossing points. we didn't want to paint new markings and the like there and then come along in a month's time and rip it all up and lay new asphalt. So certainly conscious of that, and we do intend to proceed and do all of the low-cost improvements that we can with paint and other things now that that asphalting work is done.
Okay. Thanks for that, Brian. Claire.
Could I ask, whether or not, Brian, you're getting information about those near misses around the toilet, entranceway and that? Ange Holt specifically mentioned that those cars that are taking that corner, they're not expecting people to be trying to walk across and use the toilet there, and whether or not are you getting information about, what's happening there?
No, I haven't heard any reports of that.
Brian, it's extremely dangerous for anybody that has problems with differences in the level of the ceiling there, and for that reason, older people and disabled have a bit of a problem there.
Mm.
In fact,
I think the perceptions around safety are really anecdotal, and that's not to say they don't exist. It is a really unusual place to put a toilet in the first place. But I don't know that there's ever been any collection or collation of any effective, honest, genuine data around it. It's more anecdotal observations.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's because it's difficult to know who you would report something to, because and whether or not we could just communicate with the community board to see if there's a way that they could make sure that they are the recipients of these incidents or something, so that at least they're confident that they are getting some hard evidence, just what is happening there. I mean, whether or not you think it would be better for it to be reported to council, but it isn't a council toilet as far as I understand. It's actually maintained by that shopping complex, I think.
No, maintained by council.
No, it's council one.
Well, maybe encourage people to report it to council or something. I don't know.
We do have the CRM system that can be used to make reports.
Yeah, and I guess people might not be making them, or yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hazel. I think
this isn't a new problem. This, and in actual fact, quite some time ago, a design was drawn up for the management of that parking, and that toilet was included in it. And there was remarks made that I'm going back a good 10 years now, when that whole area came up for discussion. Gary or one of the other staff who've been here for a while, but this isn't something new. This has been an ongoing thing for years, and probably people like me have just got a bit tired of kind of like trying to get something better done when nothing happens. So yes.
It's a tricky one. I know that when we discussed it at community board, we'd hoped its useful life might be near its end, but Sally told us at the time that it actually had some years to go. So it's a problem that we're still going to have to wrangle with, unfortunately, for some time. But as it currently sits, it's considered desirable but not essential. In terms of trying to collate data, how would we go about doing that, Brian?
I think just letting people know, and particularly, I guess, councillors or community board members, if they are getting public feedback, then log it with the customer services team as a CRM. Then we've got a permanent record of it, and we can see. But I guess I just reiterate my point there. Now that the asphalt work has been done, we're going to get some paint markings and other things in there which will highlight the pedestrian crossing areas. So hopefully a lot of this issue will be resolved.
Excellent, wonderful, great. Thanks for your help there, Brian. So can I assume we're comfortable then with that staff comment and recommendation appearing at the page on top of page 24 now? Excellent, cool. Well, we'll move on to the next issue raised by the community board, and that was footpath upgrade. I actually had a question, because my understanding was that the community board wanted to be able to be given a program of works so that they could contend with approaches by the community about issues around their footpaths and how long is it going to take, and why is mine not being done, and 3 streets over is nowhere near as bad and it's been attended to. So the staff comment and the recommendation doesn't reflect that, and that was something that she was seeking, or that the community board was seeking. I don't know if it's possible. Is it not possible, Brian?
It certainly is possible. I guess perhaps it's a paraphrased submission there, that it didn't really read to me that was the request. But we do set at the beginning of the year the substantial footpath renewals that will be done for the financial year, and we can supply that to the community board. And we do log all of the CRMs and the footpath repairs, the smaller repairs, tree roots lifting up paths. We log all of that in a system, and we can produce maps showing where all those locations are. As each repair request comes in, our staff inspect that probably within a few days of the request coming in, and we put a priority on it in terms of risk. We make temporary repairs when needed, and then it's issued to the contractor to put into a program according to that priority. So yes, people will make a request, and they might have to wait several weeks or several months for that repair to be done, but we are across the district doing the most important repairs first.
Okay, great, thanks for that. I think the community board would welcome that information at the beginning of the program. That would be great. So on that basis, I'm quite comfortable with the recommendation and the staff comments. Does anybody have anything to add to it or disagreement? No? Cool, tick that one off. Moving on to 19.5, another submission by the community board in respect of progress with limited time parking in the CBD. There's been a response there, and then obviously the recommendation. Does any discussion about that, or are we comfortable with our response? Andrew?
I think we're all looking forward to seeing the results of the parking study, and they've been address all these issues then hopefully quite soon.
Absolutely, Andrew. So we're comfortable with that response. We tick that one off. Moving on then to 19.7, similar vein. So the parking review should address those also. Oh crikey. So we're comfortable with those ones as well, I take it. Yep. And moving to 19.8. This is an alternate, there was a typo there, obviously. They recommended an alternative parking for business staff. Have we any comments on that one?
Oh, well, it's absolutely true, and it's jolly annoying.
Obviously, the parking review will try and alleviate some of those concerns.
Yeah.
So we're comfortable with that recommendation? Yep. Excellent. Right, next one, town entrances. Oh, here we go. There's a request there from the community board to highlight the importance, I guess, of improving the town entrances for Te Awamutu. We've got a comment and reply there from the staff referring to it as a non-essential project, and then a recommendation to receive the submission and notes the board's recommendations. Is there any discussion to be had on that point?
Well, I'd certainly like to see the northern entranceway not having just some little post in the farmer's paddock with the board attached to it. I think we need something much more significant, and I had hoped that with Te Arawai alongside that would come an interpretation of entranceways that we needed, particularly into Te Awamutu. So yeah, I mean, I agree with what's all been said here, but I have to make that comment.
Yeah, I mean, there is money there allocated in the current LTP, so it's a case of where does that fall in terms of our priorities and timing, doesn't it? So I'm comfortable with the response and the recommendation. Oh, Roger, did you have a comment? And then Claire?
Yeah, it is interesting how this comes up probably each and every year, and I think the issue is not solely one for Te Awamutu, it's one for Cambridge as well. And the challenge that we've got in terms is that our town is just expanding and expanding and expanding, and our town entrance signs probably shortly will no longer be at the town entrance. So it's an issue on both sides, but certainly in this climate, I think there are possibly some other better directed uses to what available funds we have.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Claire.
Yes, the point I'd like to make though is that we're planning certain capital projects to go ahead, and the entranceways are actually an ideal topic, I think, or project for creative input, which can have a great impact for social well-being, and also giving our artists and other creative people, a chance to get a slice of that investment that we're putting into, like we're happy to do it for infrastructure, but not for creative things. And so I appreciate that there would be a need for balance and working out the highest priorities and things like that. But I don't want to see it just discounted simply because, it's creating something attractive. We still need to get employment for our artists and creative people too.
Thanks, Claire. Good point made. Andrew.
Yeah, look, this is not an annual plan issue. In my view, it's a long-term plan one. It's in the long-term plan. We'll be discussing it shortly, and that's the appropriate place.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so we're comfortable with that recommendation, and we can move on from that there.
I don't like Susan. The words I object to there, and I suppose this was a list that they'd put together, that the project should be considered as non-essential project. I sort of take a little bit of what Claire said to say that to say something like that actually denies the enjoyment of those of us that actually like art to be a little bit more effective in our communities.
Thanks, Hazel. I don't think that by referring to it as a non-essential project in any way diminishes the need for art and the spaces that creates in terms of enjoyment.
Exactly.
But I think realistically, Andrew's right. It's not something that we can accommodate in the annual plan. It's already vested in the LTP, and that process will attend to in due course. So I think we can move on from that submission. We're all comfortable with it, and on to point 20.5, which is Cambridge Community Board's submission in respect of implementing enforce parking limits. There's a response there from staff and a recommendation that the submission be accepted, and the council notes that a parking use study was completed in November 2019. Have we got any comment to be had on that, or are we comfortable with that as is?
I just say one thing, please. Just wanted to thank Cal Tutty and his team with regards to enforcement in the town centre. We've probably got the same issue in Te Awamutu as well, but there's some repeat offenders that have been parking in the main street during working hours non-stop for years, and I can guarantee they're parking there now. And I just feel we need to get tougher with them. I believe they've been getting some fines, but the fines are very small. Don't know the exact figure, but they're probably only $30, $40. I think we just need to get tougher with them. We may not, if we get tougher with them, we may not make friends with these three people, but we'll make friends with the majority of the retailers in Cambridge. So I'd say you've got the same issue in Te Awamutu, but yeah, we just need to get a lot tougher with these repeat offenders.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So I'm assuming we're all comfortable with that one, so we can square that one away, and then moving on then to the next submission, somewhat related, 20.6, submitting that bring forward the use of parking domes that are in existence in Cambridge, and the staff comment obviously there with a submission, recommendation rather, in terms of that submission. Do we have anybody comment on that? No, everybody's comfortable with that as is? Yep, excellent. Moving on to 20.10, this is a request for an improved bus service as a priority. And obviously the staff comment touches on the business case for expanded bus services to Te Awamutu and Cambridge, and therefore recommends that the submission is accepted and endorsed, and that we endorse the staff's comments. You're all comfortable with that?
Oh, Madam Chair, of course, we got Brian Hudson to brief us at my Service Delivery Committee on the funding and why it hasn't happened. So it's in the pipeline, but.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Great, well, we can square that one off too, in lieu of there being any opposition. The next one, the Community Board supports the promotion of safe connections for cyclists and pedestrians in Cambridge, and it specifically sets out a handful of projects, and to which the staff have responded saying that they're currently engaging in preparing a new business case for consideration in the 21-31 LTP, and that the community boards will be able to have input into that. So I think that's a pretty good response to the matters raised there. Does anybody have anything they'd wish to raise on that point? No, excellent. We can say that one's fine then. Moving on to 27.1, this submitter has asked us not to fluoridate our water supply, to which the obvious reply has been recommended, in terms of this not actually being an issue that we need to address, nor do we even consider it right now. So is anybody needing any further discussion on that? Nope, excellent. Moving on to 32.1, a request by a member of the public to consider widening footpaths on account of COVID-19 issues. The recommendation is that this is an expensive and long-term solution to what hopefully will be only a short-term social need. I'm comfortable with the way that is replied, and the comments, the recommendation that has been provided to us. Yep, we're all good. Perfect. Roger.
Yeah, sorry, I just thought that a little bit of a positive point in there is that there is a strategy to widen the footpaths anyway, as part of our normal annual plan process. So it might be, a thought just to endorse the fact that yes, we do see the widening of footpaths as a community aspect.
Okay. Hazel? You're muted, Hazel.
Okay. And that's the way I understand it too, because we've got more and more mobility scooters. We've got, more use needed of wider footpaths. And I see that there's a new footpath already been put down in Kihikihi along one of the streets that's to that new dimension. And it's really super, because people, if there's someone biking along the footpath, you don't have to get out of their way now, because there's room now for a pedestrian and a cycle to pass each other. So, and I thought that was going to be the standard from now on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brian, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so we certainly are where we're renewing footpaths. A lot of them, old ones, are quite narrow, so 1.2 metres. So the minimum we're putting back in is 1.5 metres, which is the regional standard. But in other places where demand is higher, the footpaths can be 1.8 to 2 metres wide. And where we know they're going to be used by cyclists, particularly those routes to school, we're trying to put them in at 2.5 metres wide. So we certainly are making that provision.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, wonderful. Now, so if we can then move on to the Gadex Road submissions, they're all very similar, or the two submissions are similar, 33.1 and 34.1. Obviously, has submitted yesterday, very passionate and quite concerned about what is going on and has gone on up there for quite some decades now. They have a recommendation there and staff comments. Have we moved on, or do we wish to change those recommendations, and how? Claire, you're nodding.
Yeah, yes, I am, because I thought all the Cambridge councillors said they'd really like to work with those residents and come up with something that would alleviate the problem. And I thought that was fantastic outcome. I mean, I found it really heartrending to read, you know, that whole long list, that these people have had to go through, and we've got to do something. And staff haven't been able to, for various constraints that they have, or, you know, because of the status of the roadway. But I think if you've got those councillors working with those people, I'm sure they'll come up with something that's going to be an improvement.
Okay, so how do we reword that that recommendation in both of those instances then? Sally, I see you there.
Good afternoon, and thank you through the chair. Just one point that I would like to note regarding Pukemakikao is this is now part of a joint management entity with Ngāti Hoa. So they held their first meeting, it would have been pre-lockdown, so I think that was in February themselves. So a responsibility for this park now sits with that joint management entity. In terms of the notes that we've identified as part of the staff comments in our recommendation is regarding it being a public road, and that is something that there is a process, and Brian can definitely talk to that about changing that. If we were to put a gate up similar to something that's happened at Waipuke Park, there would need to be funding associated with that, because there is no funding set aside for a security gate. So I think those are the things. There's also the submitter that we heard yesterday is actually their notes are included under the community services section of the report. So I think there's about 3 of them as well.
Okay, thank you, Sally. Jim.
Oh, yeah, just confirming Sally's comments about the reserve. Well, it's now the ownership has changed, but and certainly that first meeting that Ellen and I were at, there was definitely discussion about what could be done to improve the reserve area, for want of a better description. But in terms of the road access, and I agree with your comments that the public have right of access over an unformed paper road, but that doesn't mean that they should have vehicle access. So my understanding, as long as people can walk, there's no obligation to have a paper road open for vehicle access. It's just got to be open for the public to use. So I'm just wondering whether we're 100% correct in the sort of reasoning behind our recommendation there, that the public has right of enjoyment over that paper road. They certainly can walk on it and etc. But I don't know whether we have got a problem with actually putting a gate to stop vehicle access, and whether it's whether the cost of maintaining that reserve could be offset against the damage that's done by these hoons getting up there in their cars.
Yeah.
If I could just address that, please, Mayor Jim. Obviously Gudex Road from Mangakawa Road up to the transmission tower is formed. So there's only, I think, about 200 metres beyond that which is unformed, and it's fenced into the paddocks of the adjacent farm. So the issue is not arising from the unformed piece of road, it's arising from the formed piece of road. And so, we would need to be putting a security gate down at the intersection with Mangakawa Road to actually close the formed road off from the public after hours. So that's the issue, and we probably still need to, allow a pedestrian gateway at that point, so that people could still, if they wanted to see a sunrise or a sunset or something like that, and the gate had closed, that they could still access the park.
So from a practical,
Jim, we've lost you. Jim, we've lost you. Jim, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Oh dear.
I think what Jim's saying is
Lip read, do you?
putting his lip reading is that maybe is the staff work with iwi and the councillors that were keen, and we come up with a resolution, and that current recommendation is needs a little bit of work.
Hear any of that?
No.
No, not a word. Not a word.
Sorry,
So-
it switched off as soon as I started speaking. Look, I'm just saying, can we actually look at putting the gate there and working through the process of actually closing the road to give some people some confidence that we're actually doing something and acknowledge the problem, because these guys are causing a huge amount of damage up there. And yeah, by having a gate there, it's probably going to solve a whole lot of problems.
Yes.
So just the process we have to go through, because it is a public road and it's formed, we do have to go through that public notification process to close it. Even if we're just closing it at night, we still need to, 2 advertisements and 2 council meetings, and allow for objections and submissions. So we would still need to do that process, but I agree that it is worthwhile doing that, and with the councillors and the residents and iwi canvassing the options of how that would work, and progressing that.
Yeah, so could we not say that we are actually looking into that rather than the response that we've got, which is basically it's too hard, we're not doing anything?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Fully supportive of that. Start the process.
Yeah, so we agree to work together. Oh, Gary's waving his hand around. Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, so look, I agree, but it requires a practical solution. And just looking at the aerial photographs, it's difficult to imagine where we could put a car park that isn't going to annoy some of the house owners in that locality. But I'd suggest that we need to meet with the complainants on site and work through this with Ngāti Hawa, with a view to coming up with a practical solution, which may involve some road stopping process.
Yeah. Okay. So if we can, Jenny, if we can amend that recommendation to something along in that vein, that would be great. I think we've got agreement across the committee to actually respond in that manner.
Yeah. Chair, Madam Chair, it would be quite nice to hear. It'd be quite nice to write that we're working with the affected parties, Ngāti Hawa and what have you. I can tell you there's not a lot of room on that roadside for a car park, and you've got a shearing shed and you've got cattle loading out facilities. So very, very limited in what can happen there. But I think we should start the process and go through it and see what we can achieve. Thanks.
Yeah.
But
Graham Pollard, then Phil Coles, please.
Sorry, Councillor Coles can go first because I've just got some suggested wording, but let's.
Councillor Coles.
Just briefly, yeah, I mean, like Graham said, that you've got the woolshed and everything there. That's owned by the submitter. So again, if we bring them into the conversation and discussion, I'm sure they'll be happy to come up with an agreement. And there's some grassy areas around there on the side of the road, on the side of the driveway as well, leading up to Guddocks Road.
Great. So Graham, did you have a proposed amended
just a suggestion through the chair? So something along the lines of council agrees to work with the affected parties concerned to find a practical solution to the issues raised.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sounds much better.
That's why you get the big jobs, Graham. That's
sorry?
Put beautifully.
So
that's why you get the big jobs, mate. That was put beautifully.
Excellent. So that would be the amended recommendation for points 33.1 and 34.1. Excellent. I'll just note that there's a change in all of that. And then we'll move on then to the next one, which is 35.1. Now, Hazel, this is the one that you were concerned about earlier. A proposed change or suggested change to the layout of the intersection of Gulf Road that leads to Flat Road and then to Rolleston Street.
Look, yes, and I do, because I feel very strongly about this. I have had so many of the residents that live along Flat Road and Rolleston Street come marching down to my gate to practically demand that something be done. Now, Rolleston Street, and particularly in Rolleston Street, and it's not only that I live in Rolleston Street, I actually know that this to be the truth of what they're all saying. And we have these great big trucks rattling down our street. And I think I actually discussed it with some of our staff to say it's really not on. The street isn't built for those huge, great big trucks. And what the heck are they doing coming along our street when the bypass is a long golf road and off into highway whatever to go either north or south, wherever they're coming from. But then I was told, well, their GPS tells them to do that. And you just think, for God's sake, can we not do something about changing the silly GPS? Is it controlling the safety? Now, we, in Rolleston Street, there are a lot of families. There's a lot of young children in homes along that street. And I would say probably now, particularly down the southern end where I live, there's lots of kids. And, you know, we're going to take, well, before shutdown happened, we had talked to the police about the safety down there. I've also asked the council to make that crossing of oh gosh, what's the main highway that goes east to west along there past the Kihiki school, but where it joins that road, to make them compulsory stops, because we've just had another smash the other day. And so I feel very strongly about this. Every day we think something's going to happen here. And when you get a car parked on one side of the road and on the other side of the road, then you have this great big truck. And I mean big. I mean those big logging trucks. And so why do they have to put up with that? And it just seems like we get fobbed off. But the police have said to us, well, give us your petition, and the whole we've got that all organised when we're allowed to do it, and they'll come out and they'll take photos and they'll, you know. But what can they? You see, then they say, but what law are they breaking by doing that? You know, and it just seems like it's an extremely and why the heck are the trucks coming off the route that's there for them, which has the roading built for those big trucks? What are they doing coming down our side streets?
Well, I think, Hazel, the problem with that is that, according to the statistics that council's been able to access, is that 95% of that traffic is actually car traffic, and only 5% are small trucks with 2 axles, like a delivery or rubbish truck. So,
well, I wonder when they put their counters down, because I think there would be every resident in Rolleston Street that would dispute that.
Okay, but Brian's waving his hand around. Brian, have you got something to say?
Yeah, thank you, Hazel. I'm keen to hear a bit more about that. The complaints in the past that council has received was that the heavy traffic was on Flat Road leading into Rolleston Street. And I think the submission says change the intersection of Golf Road and Flat Road to prevent trucks going through that way. So we have had these complaints in the past, and we put out traffic counters. I think it was just last year on Flat Road and the year before. And in both of those counts, we found very little, well, those statistics that were quoted there, 95% car traffic and 5% were the small trucks like the rubbish truck. But I hear you're saying that this is actually further along Rolleston Street and on the southern end of Rolleston Street. And to my knowledge, that's the first time that I've heard that the problem's at that southern end, and we've not put traffic counters out at that end. So I can certainly arrange for some special counts on Rolleston Street, say in the middle of Rolleston and at the southern end, and so we can gather some data and just see what the issue is, or how big this issue is. And like you say, it could well be trucks who are following their GPS off Whitmore Street, down Rolleston Street, heading towards State Highway 3, which is a view that I haven't heard before. So we can follow that up, and if that evidence is showing that, yes, it is a significant problem, well, we'll look for ways to address that.
Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I think that clears that away quite well. With that, yeah, and that being the case, the recommendation fits. So if I'm comfortable with that, you're all comfortable with that?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So that is the last submission in that service delivery block. Give our Wonderful governance team, a couple of ticks to put up. I don't think much was changed there, was it? Oh, there was. So if you can pop that up on the screen when you're able to, Sam, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I'll just need a couple of seconds if that's okay.
Yep, no drama.
You'll be pleased to know, everybody, that by my reckoning, we're about 70% of the way through.
I just did that maths too.
Yeah.
You can talk amongst yourselves.
We're on the same page, aren't we?
Just not the same, is it? Via Zoom.
Just while we are waiting, and I just seen flicked up on the news that they found those 2 trampers alive and well after, well, I don't know, after 18 days.
Wow.
I haven't seen any details, but
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's great.
Oh,
Great.
Impressive.
Quite worried about them.
Thanks, Jim. That's the best news of the week.
The girl Jessica O'Connor, O'Connor's the next Cambridge resident. The O'Connors was at the Catholic school there. She was a student of ours. I remember her vividly. So that's really good news. The family shifted to Wellington. So that's really good.
yeah, well, they're both alive. I don't know. They've probably lost a bit of weight.
Yeah, they're a bit chilly.
Wow.
That's great.
That is
And another day of no cases. That's 5 days in a row.
Mm, mm.
And
Yeah.
nobody in hospital. Nobody in hospital. So
Yeah.
the last one's been released.
Right. Well, that's great news. More great news. We've got this table on the screen there, starting at point number 10.3, going all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. The first one you're suggesting there be a change is 33.1. Let me just, I'm flicking through mine, just checking that'd be right. Yeah. Council, so this was the Goodex Road matter. Council agrees to work with the affected parties concerned to find a practical solution to the issues raised. So that's great. And that was the same for 34.1. And then 35.1 is all good to go as well. So that moves us into the community services section. So on this, in this topic, we start on page 30 of our submissions with point number 19.99. This is a submission by Te Wishu Community Board, alerting council to the potential to develop long-term car parking for business staff on Churchill Street, which is something they've raised quite regularly. And of course, there's a response there in terms of the staff response and then a recommendation. Have we got any discussion to be had on that point? No, everybody's quite comfortable with the response that staff have drafted? Great, awesome. So I'll move on to 19.6. Again, the Te Wishu Community Board proposed or recommends the use of bollards or strategic planting on council parks to prevent vehicles from going on. There's obviously a response around the ongoing maintenance costs for those, and that the recommendation is that we just note the request and concerns about Selwyn Park in particular. This is one that is raised quite frequently, and I guess from a personal perspective, I've never really seen any real damage or safety issue out there as a result of cars being on that park, but I'm not there all the time. So if we're comfortable with that response, Andrew?
Yeah, look, I would agree with you on that. It's not, I don't see it as being a major problem, and I don't want bollards all over the place either. So yeah, I'm happy with the response.
Yeah, and Lou's giving us thumbs up too. So I think we can safely give that one a big tick.
Yeah.
That's good. And then we're moving on to the Cambridge Community Board submissions, requesting that we complete the planting of Waipuki Park Access Road and infill the Manuka bank above the car park with native plantings. There was some discussion about this yesterday, I believe. So we've got a staff response there, and the recommendation is that we just note their requests. Are we comfortable with those? Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. Can give that a tick. And another one from the community board suggesting that the new library in Cambridge be given the highest priority. Obviously, it currently sits in years 9 and 10 of the current LTP. And the staff comments are to that effect, and a recommendation alerting them to that. No change to that?
No.
No. Excellent. Now the next one is about Lake Te Kutu and the concerns about finding a solution for the lake. And of course, given our meeting a few weeks back about the reserve management plan, I think that response is entirely accurate and on the mark. Therefore, our recommendation is pretty accurate too, in my view. Do we have anybody wanting to add anything or discuss there? No. Excellent. Next one is Cambridge Community Board's request for a destination playground. Obviously, the staff response highlights the business cases to be considered as part of the LTP program, but there's no current site yet identified. That there's an open spaces plan and chain, and obviously the community boards will be consulted. So I think that's a pretty thorough response. Do we want to have any discussion on that, or we're quite comfortable with that? Roger?
Yeah, I just think that the suggestion going back to Sue was that the community board come to us with some possible sites for the playground. It's a great idea. It gets them involved and shows that we are interested in the possibility of a community playground being developed in the CBD. So it's great.
Yeah, fantastic.
Just so long as they don't take out any car parks.
or chop down trees.
Yeah, that's a point, Jim. That's a point.
Or Victoria Square.
Yeah. Okay, so 21.1 Heritage New Zealand qualified support for a number of projects there, and we just thank them for their, that's just a staff comment. I guess there's no recommendation there because there's no real need for a recommendation. Is that right, Graham? Yeah. Okay.
Can't think of any need other than to say thanks for
yeah.
your support.
Thumbs up. Yeah, absolutely. So the next one, again, qualified support for acceleration of the growth cells C1, 2C and C3 to meet growth needs. Are we comfortable with the way that that staff comment and recommendation is drafted? Yep, perfect. We're ripping along here. Again, funding has been sought relating to, funding for historic heritage assessments. So there's an agreement there that the assessments to identify heritage values is important, obviously, and that there's a requirement there or allocation in the annual plan as it is. So we just note those submissions. We're happy with that. Yes, everybody's looking very quiet. 21.4 community services and facilities, land wars, site interpretation of facilities and heritage showcase sites. Staff comment there and a recommendation that we just note their requests. No comment there from anybody. Great, comfortable with that one. And onto the Federated Farmers submission at 22.2. Specifically connected to the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. Comments note that that the council made a similar comment too in their submissions, and mostly concerned about costs and where they'd fall. So it's good to see there's some alignment there from my perspective. So those are the comments, and there's a recommendation that we acknowledge the submission and that no further action is required. We're comfortable with that. Yep.
Yeah, good. Yep.
Excellent. And then the last one in this section, somebody notes that there's no plan to increase expenditure to maintain council reserves. There is a discussion there and a recommendation. Does anybody have anything they wish to add to that or change in any way? Roger.
Yeah, I think the answer to that one, the recommendation should be the same as going back to the two previous ones as we had on Codex Reserve, because again, their comment is the legal right of passage along a public road, and I think we've determined that there may be a practical solution in that regard.
Yeah. Okay, so we shall change that one then to coincide with the other ones addressing the issues up Goddicks Road. Excellent. So I think that is the end of the community services section by my calculations. So if we just give Sam a minute or two and Jenny a minute or two to talk amongst yourselves.
Hey, can I just ask a question, Susan? Is there still a planned workshop after this?
I haven't heard.
Nothing?
Okay. Yes, I can confirm there is. Yep, there is a planned workshop.
Oh, shit.
So this is going over quite a bit, I guess, the time that we thought. So there might be some of us who might struggle to do that workshop. How long is the workshop?
That's a workshop that will probably take half an hour, and it's relating to the funding mix between the UAGC and the general rate shift. So we've modelled that. So it might pay to start with a quick straw poll and just get a sense of how fast we want to drive that one through.
Okay, I was expecting it to be a longer workshop than half an hour. So if it's only half an hour, I'm sure that's fine. Or thereabouts.
Okay, right. So those community services submissions are all unchanged through to 26.1, which was the Goddicks Road issue, which coincides or marries up with the same issue raised in the earlier topics. So that looks good to me. Thank you very much, Sam. So moving on to property section. First submission there on point 1.1, we're on page 35. This is the Kaipeki group have asked for assistance in terms of their costs they've met regarding mowing and the remaining money outstanding on their loan. It seems pretty self-explanatory to me in terms of the staff comments and that recommendation, but I open the floor to other comments. Jim, we can't hear you. No.
Susan, could I ask Gary how things have progressed and just the mowing part of it?
Yeah.
Forget about the loan part of it.
I thought I saw Sally lurking in the background. I was looking for a comment from her on the mowing. Okay. But again, Bruce, my understanding is that there's a lease to the cricket club which requires them to do the mowing. But look, Sally will be able to confirm.
Okay. Yeah, well, we can leave that and get back to.
If you've just got me, that was a. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Oh, not now. We could hear you say, can you hear me now? Yeah.
That's no good. It was just and Sally can probably cover this off. In terms of, and I appreciate the comments that are there, but is this the only community hall that's got a big area of grass that they are actually responsible for? Because it seemed to me, sort of from my memory, most of the community halls haven't got a big area of grass that they're mowing at their own cost.
Thank you, and through the chair, all of the community halls are actually managed by the property team. So in terms of knowing them in intimate detail would sit with John Miles. In terms of the mowing subsidies that we do currently provide, they are for larger areas which support, I suppose, more of a higher level of service than what we can provide. So Kiki Polo, Cambridge Polo are examples of that in terms of those existing mowing subsidies. Those existing mowing subsidies are also within wider parks as well that other people can use, whereas in terms of my understanding with this site, it is very much leased completely to this site. I'm sorry, I can't really, anything else to do with the lease that's set up would be through property team.
So just on that, to my knowledge, the grounds are open for other uses. It's quite a big area that they're responsible for. So yeah, and we've got the Ngahinapuri situation where there's mowing done there at the domain. Halpo, I'm not sure who pays for all of that.
Jim, I could maybe elaborate on the Ngahinapuri situation. It's paid for by council because it's cost effective for council to be local to be mowing it, like the golf club mow the Ngahinapuri grounds because it's most rate cost double for council to mow it. Now there's disparity. Kaipai's got a ground too, and just over all the lockdown period, when they got out of it, there were about 4 or 5 locals going around with their ride-ons, which was actually ridiculous, but they've done it. So I think there's just a bit of disparity around the district.
Yeah, so I'm quite comfortable with the comments that are being made here, but just so long as we are sure that they're not being unfairly disadvantaged, that's all.
Great. All right. Have we got any further discussion on that one? No, there being no further discussion, I assume we're comfortable with the staff response and the recommendation as it rests. Yes. All right. Done. Moving on then to the next one is Cambridge Community Board submission that for the upgrade and refurbishment of the Cambridge Town Hall. It's obviously staff comment there, setting out what has actually happened and then a recommendation. Are we comfortable with both the staff comment and the recommendation? Yeah, lots of nodding going on. That's good. So, tick that one and we can turn over the page. So we're on page 36 now, point number 38.1. Now this submitter's asked us to consider the issue of affordable housing. Obviously this has been something that's come up quite a bit through the course of this annual plan hearing. Obviously the response there sets out that the housing working group has been established and that the recommendation we have there in terms of the response to this submission is that we accept the submission and we continue to support that housing working group. We're comfortable with that?
Well, so is all of this being added onto the agenda, Susan? Because, you know, we haven't had a meeting for that housing working group and for a while. And so are these considerations being added so that they're on the agenda? So when we meet, we actually address them?
Well, I would have thought that the proposition put in that submission actually is essentially what your housing working group is meant to do anyway. I don't believe that she suggested anything over and above what the group was convened to do in any event.
Okay.
Ken's got his hand raised there.
Yeah. So through the chair and in answer to the councillor's question, yeah, certainly affordable housing is well within the terms of reference of the housing working group. Now you'll appreciate that has only just been established. We had our first meeting just prior to lockdown, yeah, we're actually just looking for a date in June that will work for a second meeting. So yeah, so we're hoping to get notice of a second meeting out very soon.
Oh,
not Zoom, I hope, Ken.
Oh, sorry, what was that, councillor?
Not by Zoom, I hope.
Not by Zoom. Okay, well so that needs to be a consideration. I mean, I guess it is a smaller group. We'll canvass some councillors in terms of what the best mechanism is.
Great, thanks for that clarification, Ken. So I take it that we're comfortable with the response there to that submitted then at 38.1.
Yep.
Good, and then similar topic in terms of social housing and the subcommittee working group. There's a proposition or suggestion that that there should be other members on that working group from the community, and the recommendation is that the housing working group should decide whether they would want some those members on them. Discussion, Roger.
I'd just like a change of wording there, where we've got council for appointment as appropriate. I would just like to be for consideration as appropriate, and that just leaves the field open whether we have by submission to that group or whether we have membership. I just think that that's limiting the options that are there for the committee.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a good change. Anybody else have anything to add to that? No. So you grabbed that one, did you, Sam?
Yes.
Excellent. So that brings to the end the section on property. So if we just wait a couple of minutes until Sam gets it up on the screen, we can flick through. By my reckoning, I think there was only the last one with a change. The others were all unchanged.
Hi, did you get that last one to put in?
Are you talking to Sam, Joe? How are you going there, Sam?
Talk about no one talking.
It looks like I'll have to do the change my end. What was that one again? Sorry?
It's only a small change in the recommendation on 39.3. Rather than saying on the last bit of it, it says, and propose to council for appointment as appropriate. I think Roger suggested we say propose to council for consideration as appointment, as appropriate. Is that right, Roger?
To council for consideration.
Yeah, just remove the word appointment to consideration. Yeah. That being the only change, I don't think, we don't need to see the table.
No, I don't think so with this one.
We'll just soldier on into regulatory. So we're now on page 37, point 7.5, submission 7.5. These next two obviously relate to licensing matters. Pretty self-explanatory what they're seeking, and then the response, got the staff comment there, and then the council recommended response. It's pretty, we've got no wiggle room there as far as I read it. Andrew's nodding his head. We all seem happy with that. We better be, because we've got nothing else we can do there. Okay, great. Moving on then to the next one. Again, there's little we can do there, unfortunately, for this person other than to thank them. Are we comfortable with that, the way that that is worded? Yeah, excellent, fantastic. Moving on to page 38, point number 20.7, Cambridge Community Board supports the community priority areas in the 2019 Town Concept Plan refresh. So that's nice, we've said thank you. That's about the strength of that one, so I'm assuming we're feeling all comfortable with that. Yep, great. Then on to 27.2. There's a plea from a submitter to not allow telecommunication companies to set up more cell phone towers and 5G technology. Obviously, this is a very topical subject, but we're all aware of the limitations that exist in this space in terms of whose responsibility this is and the national environmental standards that are currently in place. So there's a staff comment there and a recommendation. Are we comfortable with that, or are there any suggested changes? No, we're all good. Excellent. I have to confess, submitter point number 27.3, I had to Google Agenda 21 to understand what it was, and I now see that. So there's a staff response there and a recommendation, which I think is entirely appropriate in the circumstances. We're in support in respect of that matter. Yep, excellent. Over the page 39, Cambridge Community Board has asked whether there was a possibility that we could bring forward the CBD projects in order to create jobs and keep local businesses going. Obviously, there's a response there, and our recommendation accepting those, so that submission and noting their requests. No discussion on that. I take it. Fantastic, thank you. Moving to 22.3. There is a request in the future for consultation information on LTPs and annual plans to have more detailed itemised tables of benchmark properties as rating examples. I kind of think that is a helpful thing to have too, so I kind of quite like that idea. But there's a staff response and a recommendation, and no particular commitment to other than to say that better information for consultation is noted. We're comfortable with that? Yeah. Okay. In lieu of anybody waving hands at me, I'm assuming we're comfortable with it. Moving on then to point 22.7. Request that the up and coming review of the LTP enables us to actually contemplate undertaking some of the productivity commissioner's findings. There's a response there set out by staff and a recommendation asking the submitter to participate in the community engagement process. So I think that's an appropriate response in the circumstances. Great. And then 22.8. Oh, my eyes are going a bit wonky. That future community consultation encourages participants to think about costs and how they would be prepared to pay for proposed services. A good response by staff and a recommendation. I'm comfortable with that. Yep, excellent. So, and then the last one in that section there is a request by the submitter for us to concern ourselves only with the main issue of infrastructure. And obviously, there's a well-worded response by a staff or comment by staff, and then our recommendation there is noted below that, and I presume we're all happy with that as well. Yes, excellent. So turn the page. So I don't think there were any changes in that lot. So we can move on straight on to the next one, which is the policy section. Now, so we're on page 41. An interesting observation in terms of smoke-free policies by submitter 2.1, and a very logical and well-worded response by staff there and our recommendation. Any discussion there or comments to be made by anybody? None, I take it. Excellent.
Well, it looks like the non-smoking in cars is coming in, so that just might lead to the public working it out for themselves that they're not meant to smoke anywhere in public.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the next one then is point 39.2 is a request to implement the White Ribbon Workplace Accreditation, which we discussed yesterday. This is Ange Holt's baby, if you like, and that was really well received, I think. And certainly I'm really comfortable with the staff comment and recommendation. Kirsty, have your hand up there.
Yes, Steve Shaw's has suggested an alternative wording from the staff response, suggesting that we reword to instead read, Council thanks the submitter for their request and confirms Council supports White Ribbon Workplace Accreditation. So if we could make that change, if councillors are comfortable with that, that more specifically addresses the issue.
It's a more affirmative statement, isn't it? Yeah. I think we've got across the board nodding there. So if we can change that wording, that would be great. Thanks, Kirsty. Great suggestion. Change on that one. Save, and then we'll flick over. So that's the end of the policy section. Sam, are you able just to change that wording and we can move on, or do we want to see that wording? Or, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Kirsty, just...
I can forward that through to you, Sam. I'll just forward you an email with that changed wording.
I've just done that.
Okay.
Already done.
You've got it, Graham?
Yeah, I've already flicked it through.
Oh, look at you. Excellent. So turning now into the community relations section, and there's the last three submissions by my reckoning. to deal with today. 23.1, appearing on page 42. This is a submission in respect of Neighbourhood Support Cambridge, which almost takes us full circle because we still haven't received responses, I believe, from the inquiry made, have we, Graham?
No, I've heard nothing back.
As to the entity there.
No, I've heard nothing back.
Okay, all right. So we've got a staff comment there and a recommendation thanking them, and yeah. So there's nothing further we can add to that one, really, is there? Right now, no. So these were the fleshing out. These were the fleshed out things that they were asking for. You see, and the second one was to be acknowledged as the important link between the local community with police, civil defence, and other agencies. And then the third one was to continue to receive Waipa Council updates and media releases. So those were the three of the things they were seeking. So I don't have any problems with any of those, but does anybody else have a point they wish to raise in respect of any of those three submissions, all in respect of the Cambridge Neighbourhood Support Group? Phil, are you just waving at me or what? No, you know. Hi. Yeah. No, nothing there. So the one outstanding then in respect of the Cambridge Neighbourhood Support then is the 23.3, which doesn't appear in this section. And it was the query over funding that we currently provide them and were they seeking an increase or not. And we haven't got any clarity on that, unfortunately. So
we're waiting to hear back.
Yeah. I guess that, I mean, well, that's something that we can probably address it briefly anyway in terms of our meeting on the 9th in any event, because it is a financial matter. So it makes sense for it to be dealt with in anyway. So long as we have that information by then, I'm sure we'll be able to resolve that submission. Excellent. So no changes to community relations, that small change to policy, and I think that's us done. Look at us. Is that everything, Graham?
It is. We do have some resolutions to go through.
Oh, crikey, go back to my actual...
We've got to go back to the original covering report.
Yeah, okay, back to the agenda.
All those recommendations.
Appearing on page 5 of our agenda, paragraph 2, we've got those 4 recommendations. Sam, hello.
I have a draft recommendation I can pop up on the screen if you like.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Sam. You've got a dog somewhere in the background there.
I heard.
Okay, so there we have the draft recommendations. Obviously, A and B are unchanged. C is approving the staff recommendations included in the staff comments by submission number with the following amendments. So the box and table underneath there relates to each and every one of the submissions that we have dealt with and changed. Admittedly, they're not appearing, well, they are appearing in the same manner in which we dealt with them in terms of by topic, but incrementally we've actually agreed to the amendment of those responses as we've dealt with them. So those are the changes subject to those amendments. The staff recommendations subject to those amendments. And then D that's unchanged, isn't it? Approves amending the draft annual plan to incorporate any amendments arising from the consideration of submission prior to a meeting of the Strategic Planning and Policy Committee to be held on the 9th of June. Okay, so we're all comfortable with that recommendation. Do I have somebody to move it and somebody to second it?
To move, Susan.
Liz is happy to move. Roger's happy to second. All those in favour say aye.
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 Against? Carried. Wow.
Well done.
What a marathon.
Well done.